Welcome to your 2026 relationship marketing strategy. I am delighted to have you here. My name's Adrienne Gallia. I'm the founder of Visionaries, where we do lots of community-centric things, community events, networking, as well as other things like funding, some education and things like that. But I really love building a business through community. I think that of all of the assets that you can build within your business, and they're all very important to build, but I believe that human relationships, human assets, the people that are in your life and available to you for your business, I feel like these are probably the most important. And I say that because they're the only asset that actually has a heartbeat. So I'm excited to dive into this with you today. I would love it if you had any big takeaways, or if you just want to come say hi, if you want to find me on social media. I'm not super active anywhere on social media, but I am on Instagram if you want to come find me here, or on LinkedIn at Adrienne Gallia. So let's get into it. There's no big, there will be a very, 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 very small pitch at the end that's just sort of lets you know a couple different places where you can come find us. But this is not a training that's going to actually like give you a come join this program sort of thing. This is not that. So this is going to be all strategic value. So before we get started, I think it's important to just sort of give a level set of what my relationship brand principles are. I would encourage you to develop this for yourself as well. But if you're looking on the screen here and you're like, this is not really me, this is not really the way that I'm looking to build relationships, then I'm glad we've caught this at less than 2 minutes in, because this is not going to be the place for you. So first and foremost, we are always leading with generosity first and strategy second. When we get into the pillars of relationship marketing, you're going to see that this is a big one. So if you don't want to show up generously with going into number 2 with no hidden agendas, and into number 3, or really into number well, no, I guess they sort of all build on each other in this way, but like we're always leading with generosity. There's no expectation of anything happening in return. And that's like one of the big pillars, or it's part of one of the big pillars when we get into my pillars for relationship marketing. So we're always leading with generosity. Also, there are never hidden agendas. I heard someone say, this would have probably been a year or so ago, that there was like a whole post on, if you're getting on lots of different connection calls and lots of different coffee chats, and this was like connection calls not designed to be a sales call. If you're getting on lots of coffee chats and you're not converting any clients, like here are the things that you should be doing. And it was essentially teaching people like you should be developing networking relationships and pitching, getting on these like no pressure coffee chats in order to convert them to clients. And I was like, that's gross. That's flat out never going to like, I can't even begin to say that's disgusting to me. It's a hidden agenda, right? So we are never, ever, ever. And I've been on a couple of those calls. I was on one really egregious call like that, burnt a bridge with me forever and ever. So there's never a hidden agenda. We're always being transparent and upfront with what things are. If it's a sales call, it's a sales call. If it's a connection call truly to be like a coffee chat, then that's all it is. We're not there to, try and disguise what we're actually trying to do. We are developing a system for follow-up and follow through, because that is where trust is built. We are always curating for alignment, not for volume. It's going to be a lot more important in the long run, and probably a lot more sustainable in the long run, for you to develop relationships based on things that are going to be rooted in value and strategic alignment, rather than like just sort of spray and pray, like throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what you can get back. Well, there's always a time and place for those sorts of things. And then lastly, relationships are long-term sacred assets. They are not sales channels. So this goes back to, your relationships and the human capital in your business. It's the only asset that you can develop that has an actual heartbeat. So they are your most sacred asset, and they are the long term. They're the long game. Relationships are a long game, and relationships are not intentionally designed to be sales channels. They're so much more than that. They can lead to sale, like they can be a pipeline for sales, but that's not the point, first and foremost. So with that in mind, who should actually be watching that? First of all, if you're like, no, I don't resonate with those things you just said, stop it here. But if you genuinely want to connect with people and develop relationships because you enjoy connection and people and things like that, then great. But then beyond that, relationship marketing can sound amazing, and it definitely can be amazing, but there are some more strategic uses for it. So at any stage, it doesn't matter where you're at in your business, if what you are looking for with relationships is simply to have more connection and more expansion, to have people in your ecosystem, in your orbit. We're going to talk about your relationship orbit. If you want people in your orbit who can help you ideate, help you refine those ideas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like that's going to be helpful for you to practice relationship marketing at any stage. If you are more mid-stage and you're starting some traction, it also can be really helpful to develop a relationship marketing strategy when you are starting to want more visibility to a strategic network. So this could be because you want more visibility overall. You're trying to get more podcasts, you're trying to land more events, you're trying to do things that are going to essentially elevate your brand so that you have more eyes on it, but also so that you have visibility toward a more strategic network, simply in that you need to sort of elevate the relationships that you're developing. And it's, that's going to accomplish very specific goals for you in that way. And then when you are earlier stage or pre-revenue, I would say that the best place to be using relationship marketing is when you have a referral-based business model. So that, like the hard and fast rule that I can put behind that would be if you are in any type of one-on-one work. So if you're a one-on-one coach, if you're doing direct consulting, if you are doing done for you work, like when people typically are going to be referring you. So this would be a lot different than if you're someone who's just selling low cost digital products, or you're an e-com seller or something like that. You're really not in a referral model. You can build a referral based business, but it's not going to be something that gets you early traction, unless you are potentially leveraging affiliate relationships very early on. So it's just something to keep in mind. There's no like very strict rule on this. I just think that I've met a lot of people who are like, oh, I really would love to build my business. I don't align with typical marketing and sales strategies. I'd rather just use like the human element. And in some cases it makes sense. And in some case, I mean, like frankly, people are living in unicorn land. Just to be really blunt about it, is, depending on what it is that you're trying to sell, you can't rely on relationships to get that early traction for you. But there is a time and place, and you do have to understand that this is a long game. So I think that that's important to just sort of level set this. And if you hear that and you're like, that's not the answer that I'm looking for, I really, that's not helpful to me, then you don't have to keep watching this. That's why I do this in the beginning, so that, we can go from there. So getting into the actual strategy, and I want to also just sort of preface, not to mansplain something to you, but to just sort of preface that when I say strategy, I mean like big picture macro, looking at like what's the direction you're trying to move toward, as opposed to tactics. Like there are some tactics that are sprinkled in here, which is the direct, like how to step by step execute something, but strategy is much bigger picture. So the strategy behind all of this is that I believe the foundation of relationship marketing lies in care. CARE is an acronym. So if you've been around me for any length of time, you might already know that I love frameworks. I have a master's degree in learning design. And so I use frameworks everywhere that I humanly possibly can. And so CARE is an acronym for my relationship marketing framework. So there are 4 pillars of relationship marketing, the first of which is connection. And we are going to spend the absolute bulk of our time on this one, because there is so much that goes into this. It's sort of like the who, what, when, where, and why, except it's not going to be like those exact things, but it's like the root of all of this. And then we'll spend a little bit less time on the other 3. And that's where I'll give you a little bit more like tactical structure around some of this, just a little bit, because I have a feeling that just this first pillar around connection, we're going to be here for a little while. So getting into pillar number 1 of connection, the purpose of this pillar is to intentionally initiate relationships that are rooted in curiosity rather than transaction. So like that goes back to like my core brand principles around developing relationships is it's never transactional. Like we are here to lead with generosity, not for, expecting some type of reciprocal value for which we're developing this relationship. Like I'm not here for that. It's almost like a paradox that the people who are more willing to play the long game are probably going to have the best luck at finding traction sooner, but you can't go into it with that expectation. And I think that that's sort of the paradox of it, because the people who are willing to play the long game typically show up with more generosity, and they're more rooted in curiosity of what other people are doing, and that naturally starts to spark ideas of how they can help them, which we'll talk about later on. That's another one of the pillars, and that actually gives them more traction sooner. But you have to be willing to just like not get anything in return. We are always investing more time in other people and leading with curiosity in who they are and what they're looking for and what they want than what we're showing up for. Also being strategic around what we're actually looking to accomplish too. But this is the connection piece. And the choices that you make around connection is where relational gravity starts. So when I say relational gravity, I mean the pull, like they're all going to have, there's a lot of words around here that are connected toward this sort of like space theme that I sort of have going on here. Like I really could have gone all in on this theme around like designing this presentation to have like little rocket ships and having sort of this out of this world sort of branded look to it. But anyhow, it's this like pull. When you think of gravity, it's like where you get the most pull. Something feels heavier because it's closer to the ground. And that's where you start to develop relational gravity. So you're going to hear the gravity is there. We're going to talk about orbits. We're going to talk about rocket rooms in just a minute. So there's this sort of like space theme that I have going on here. But anyway, so the choices around connection are where you start to develop this relational gravity. And this is where you are going to create opportunities to meet the most aligned people, not through random networking, but rather through purposeful visibility by starting to identify the right people and the right rooms. And this is going to get into like why this specific pillar is going to take us so long to get through. So we're going to go deep into all of this. So the core practices here around connection are to first identify your networking genius. We're going to talk about what that is. So if you're like, I don't know, what does that mean? We're going to get into it. Then you're going to sketch out who's in and who you want to be in your relationship orbit. So again, it has this sort of spacey theme to it. So who's in your relationship orbit and who you want to be in your relationship orbit. And then starting to map your rocket rooms that already hold the most aligned people and opportunities. Again, what is your relationship orbit? We're going to talk about that. And what is a rocket room? We're going to talk about that. That's why this pillar is going to take so long. And then lead with curiosity throughout. So you are going to ask, you are going to listen, and you are going to lean in before pitching or positioning yourself. And this is where you are leading with value, leading with curiosity, leading with generosity before you get into any type of expectation that's going to come out of this. And at some point, like if you don't start to have some type of strategic guidance and strategic intention behind it, you're going to burn yourself out. But like this really is, I think this is the vibe when you go into any type of room and start to get more discerning around like who are the people that are going to give you traction in the long run, which sort of comes into when we talk about all of these other things like relationship orbit and rocket room. So let's get into this. So networking genius, the first thing that you want to do here is identifying your networking genius. Why I say this. So you probably don't have the time or the energy to be everywhere all at once or to be everything to everyone, right? Like, especially if you have a family, especially if you have any kind of life outside of your business. And I hope you do. I hope you have a very robust and rich life outside of your business. And like, you just don't have the time to be doing all of the things. And looking at what I'm saying here, of like leading with curiosity, leading without expectation, being willing to show up without getting anything in return, like that's going to be exhausting. So the first step is determining like, what is your networking genius? What is a way in which you can show up that's going to feel sustainable in the long run? So this is going to allow you to focus on the things that you actually enjoy while being of value to other people. And it's going to give you a clear system for where to direct your attention as a resource. So directing your attention as a resource is one of the upcoming pillars. Just spoiler alert on that. So your networking genius, there are 6 different types of networking genius. I keep saying I've been saying for like a year that I'm going to develop a quiz on this. I think it would be a good lead magnet for all the other stuff that I do. But this is, I just had like a brilliant thought that I am also a funnel builder. I just had the perfect, like, this is my funnel that I can build. So potentially maybe you've come here because I've already built this quiz and you were given this relationship video, this relationship training is like an add-on to, you took the quiz, now here's a video. Anyhow, your relationship genius, there are 6 different relationship or networking geniuses that I have sort of developed as a framework. So the first genius is that you are the builder. So this is sort of like, if you're an Enneagram 3, like me, I'm an Enneagram 3, or, what your Myers-Briggs, the 16 personality types are, like I'm an ENTJ, which is the commander. So this is it's sort of like one of these, personalities type things. You can put stock in it or not. So, but the builder is someone who loves to create opportunities and bring people together through hosting events, through hosting meetups, etc. Not everyone is naturally this way. This is definitely me, like hands down, this is definitely my networking genius. And I think that as entrepreneurs, a lot of us default to sort of being this person, because as business owners, we are people who want to build our own thing. So a lot of business owners can sort of fall into this builder personality type. And then it becomes a question of how much time, energy, effort, resources are you able to, or do you want to dedicate to being these things? Because sometimes it's not always about building your own rooms, but about finding these sort of like microcosms within the room where you can build other things. So people who, if you want to create opportunities and bring people together, then you have more of a builder personality. The connector personality in the networking genius is someone who loves to introduce people to other people in their network looking to collaborate. So this is where I default in most rooms that I'm in. So where I am definitely the builder personality type, I default to, outside of just rooms that I'm building, but even in rooms that I'm building where I'm showing up as someone who's trying to be helpful to people, I definitely show up as the connector. So I don't know if my voice is getting quieter. I just had to switch something and I had to move over, and I don't know if it's affecting my voice, the quality of the sound. Anyhow, so it's really difficult for me to show up on, like, I've had probably in the last week, I've had probably a dozen requests to get on a coffee chat just for like networking purposes. I've turned every last one of them down because they're really, really draining to me. I enjoy getting on one-on-one calls and just like meeting people, but I do not enjoy it virtually because it drains me. So I do enjoy it, but like I don't in the long run because it wipes my day out. It just completely, like, it just zaps me. So I'm really, really, really protective of my calendar. But what I can help people with is facilitating connection. I'm really good at remembering what my brain is, like a sieve. Like I remember everything people tell me. Sometimes I don't remember where or all of the specific details, but I typically remember, this person mentioned this thing. Like I had someone the other day say to me, I just found this room in New York that's available for rent, and it's this thing, without getting into all the details of it. And I was like, I know this specific person who was looking for that exact thing. And so I was able to go tag them within the group and say, hey, could you also share it with this person? Because I know that that's something they're looking for. So I'm someone who naturally remembers and can connect the dots between this person was looking for this. So I can start to make these. It's very easy for me to make an introduction. That's very simple for me to do. And I enjoy connecting people in that way. The rest of these, you're going to see that like they start to be less For me, they start to be less interesting, and I would not enjoy doing these things. But building and connecting, I can do those things. I want to build all day long, and connecting is very easy for me. That's an easy way for me to add value. So the collaborator is someone who loves to create joint business relationships with other people to facilitate mutual growth. So this would be someone who's like really down to connect with people to, maybe you can do some type of joint project. Maybe you can create some type of joint program. Now, I've done collaborations in the past. I'm typically the person who likes to build collaborations as the builder, where it's like just me, I'm doing my own thing on my own. Now, I have, with the right person, I've done a couple collaborations, but overall, I don't enjoy them. I don't enjoy them. I have a friend that like he thrives on this. He loves to work with anyone and everything and everywhere. And at some point, for quite a while, we're working on something together. And I think we had a mismatch in the level at which we wanted to collaborate, because I was like, I'm starting to make space for you in my business, and that for me is like this very trusted place to be. I don't do this with most people. And so like if I'm doing this with you, I'm all in on you and what we're doing, and like I'm all in. And I started to see a mismatch because that's not at all the way that he was. He was like, I mean, this isn't the way that I mean it, because this was not at all a relationship. So I'm not trying to like mix the way that I'm not trying to pull anything around a romantic relationship into this, but it's almost like a romantic relationship in that one person wants to build that life with one person and one person only, and the other person wants to play the field. Like that's a mismatch in a romantic relationship. It's also a mismatch in a business relationship when you have someone who's like, I'm open to some collaboration, but like if I go in on collaboration, I'm all in with that one thing and that one thing only, versus someone who's like, I want to have all the collaborators all the time and do all the things. For me, that was a mismatch. And I'm just speaking from my own experience and adding that, hopefully having you think about, giving you some things to think about. But for like I would say that this person that I know, he's a true collaborator. I think that this is probably the thing that he would be first and foremost above anything else. And so for me, as someone who's like, I'm a builder personality for first and foremost, it's hard for me to collaborate on things because I always want to build my own thing. And so that was a challenge for me. And like ultimately there was a mismatch there in terms of us doing business together, but we are very, very good connectors for each other because we know how to move people into each other's orbit, so to speak. So that's the collaborator type. Then the nurturer. Oh, I need to move this here. I can't read all this. The nurturer is someone who loves to check in on people, to build relationships, and show up with genuine curiosity for other people. This is not me. Like, I can go a year without talking to someone and be like, that's fantastic. We can pick up right where we left off. Like, I have to make very, very intentional effort to remember to check in on people, even if like there's probably a good chance that I'm thinking about you and remembering you and sending all the good things your way, but actually picking up the phone and saying something, that takes a lot of effort for me. I am not naturally the nurturer at all. This is something that I have had to work toward building like a system to be able to do, because it's just not naturally who I am at all. So, but I know other people who are so naturally inclined to this specific personality type that's just like, it's their nature. They do this so easily. And this is a way in which you can add a lot of value to people, to show up, to show that you care, to show genuine interest. And so that's something that sort of my brain fries out on. I don't really understand it, but I know a lot of people who are this. And it's nice to have these people in your life because it does give you a little bit of the warm and fuzzies to have these people around. So that's the nurturer. Then the cheerleader. And the cheerleader is someone who loves to celebrate their network, but might not necessarily know how to do more or might not want to do more, depending on the season that they're in. So like, I know some people who are they're the builder, they're the connector, the collaborator, etc. But given the stage that they're in their life, the season that they're in, maybe they just had a new baby, or because they've got a really big project going on with work, or because they've got something in their personal life, like whatever the reason might be, this is really the only thing that they can do for right now. And so they're just able to celebrate their network. They want to show up, they want to cheer you on, they want to ask how they can help. If they know somebody, they can go ahead and try to make that connection or whatever, but they're really there to really celebrate what it is that you're doing and be your, biggest fan in any way that they can. And some people, like, that's just how they genuinely show up in the world. Other people might do that because that's the only thing that they're really able to do in this moment for whatever reason. And then lastly is the mentor, which the mentor loves providing guidance and being of support to others without necessarily being paid for it. So I think that this is really helpful when you are willing to develop relationships and you're willing to give a little bit of information away for free. It can be really helpful to develop very symbiotic relationships and that are rooted in a lot of deep trust because they understand what your expertise is, because you are actually demonstrating it in a very tangible way to them. But that's also not to say, like, I want someone who is typically going to be paid for their expertise to show up and not get paid for it. Like, there's a fine line there, of course, but that's the mentor, like someone who is genuinely able to just like show up and offer value and support and strategic guidance, or, some type of guidance in a way that's going to be helpful. And they're willing to do that without, any type of reciprocity on what they're going to get as far as payment in terms like that and things like that. And I would argue that I'm also that person. I just really have to draw the line that I can't do it all the time. Like, I would, if money were no object, I would just like be the mentor role all the time for everyone everywhere. And also if energy were in endless supply, like, I love mentoring people, but it's just not realistic. It zaps the energy out of me. As much as I love it, it's one of those weird things that as much as I love it, it really drains me. So anyhow, those are the 6 different networking geniuses. So which one of these do you think you would lean toward? And there's a really good chance that you're probably going to be multiple of these things the way that I am. So what can you provide for people? And this is really the point, is of these things, what can you do to help people? Are you going to be the person who in this seat, you can just cheer them on in whatever it is that they're doing? Can you connect them with other people? Can you be a collaborator for certain types of people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What can you do to add value? Because we're going to come back to this when we talk about the other pillars. The second thing under this pillar is to talk about relationship orbit. And so why understanding relationship orbit is useful is it helps you understand that there are layers and levels of relationships in the way in which you build them. It also helps you understand that different relationships will do and be different things for you, depending on where you're at. And that there is a best practice, which is to build different types of relationships at different layers and levels. So what does all this mean? So your relationship orbit, you're not going to be able to see with the one little thing here. So your relationship orbit, this is where it starts. Your outer orbit are the people that are in your orbit that are new or early stage connections. The people who are in your middle orbit, there's no good place for this right now. The people who are in your middle orbit are your current relationships with future potential, like you can see them going somewhere. And then your inner orbit are the deepest connections and active collaborators. So people that you are spending probably the most amount of time with, the people that you are wanting to go all in on. It is valuable to develop all of these stages, all of these layers within relationships. And ideally, you are going to stack them with different types of people within your orbit. So there are 3 types of people. So the first is people who are your peers. These are going to be people who are similar in your business stage, similar in a stage of business as you are. With a similar level of knowledge as you are, but they have potential for collaborations and referrals, and they're built for connection. So I would also argue built for collaboration when it's applicable. But these people are the people who are building alongside of you that you can walk hand in hand with. And so to be overly simplified with it, the people, if you're just starting your business, the people who are also just starting your business. I say that's oversimplified because, like, if someone has been in business for 20 years and they're starting over again, even though they're building their business, their peers are other people who are starting their business, but there's a massive knowledge disparity in what that looks like. So, it's not so cut and dry, but in general, like you're in a similar stage, or as close as you can get based on your experience and knowledge and expertise, based on what you're doing within your business. Then you have people who are your expanders. And these are people who are probably going to be a little bit further along in their business than you are. So, you don't have to define that with any kind of hard or fast rule, but someone who's a couple of steps ahead. If you're at step 2, someone who's at step 3, step 4, step 5. If you're at step 0 or step 1, someone who's at step 2, step 3. You know what I mean? Like just a little bit further ahead than you are, and a little bit further ahead in what they've accomplished, and a little bit further ahead in how they're thinking about things. And these people can be collaborators, they can be referrals, they can be connectors, but this is really built to help propel your growth, because they're going to be people who they might be connectors for you and all those things, and that will also propel your growth. But these are going to be people who are going to expand the way that you think. They're going to expand your capacity to hold within your business because they show you what's possible. And realistically, we need all of these types of people. And then lastly, you have your rock stars. So your rock stars are the people who are much further ahead. So, if you're at that stage 2, stage 3, these are the people who are already at level 10. You know what I mean? Like they are much further ahead, and they are likely much better connected than you are. Like these are the people that if you can really get in with these people, they're going to open a lot of doors. And so because of that, there is a potential for the rocket fuel level of connection to go. And we're using spacey words here. It's like a rocket fuel type of connection. And so these relationships are built for heavy traction. The example that, I would use here is, I was having a conversation with someone, and based on what this person was doing, I was like, it would sort of be like if you were able to somehow get in with someone like Jenna Kutcher. If you know who Jenna Kutcher is, she's a really, really big name in the online business space. She's got a huge blog, a huge brand, a huge podcast. She's got the Gold Digger podcast, which is one of the biggest podcasts that's ever been created. One of the biggest business podcasts in the world. And like I've heard her say multiple times that she's hired someone just from like a cold DM, and that she winds up connecting the dots with people, and she'll, refer people out and things like that. Like if you were able to get someone like that as a connection, you know how many doors that would probably wind up opening for you. But is it going to happen now, or is it going to happen 3 years from now? You just don't know. And that's when you are playing the long game, it's even more important to play a long game with these types of people, because there's a really good chance that there are other people who are also vying for their attention. And there's a really good chance that because there are so many people and there are so many different things going on with these people, that number one, they're not going to catch everything. But number two, they've got to be discerning around the way that in which they're building their own relationships. And they're also trying to pour into themselves by developing, whether they would say it this way or not, because this is sort of my language that I'm using, but where they're also pouring into themselves around developing relationships with their own peers who are at a completely different place than your peers are going to be. You know what I mean? The people who are your rock stars, their peer connections are very, very, very different than yours. And the people who are expanders for them, I would argue that there might be a little bit of overlap, but probably by and large, these are going to be people who are also very different for them than they are for you. So they're building different spaces and places to connect. They're building different rocket rooms than you are when we talk about rocket rooms. So these are your rock stars, but there's a lot of benefit in being able to find rooms that have rock stars for you, or to build your own rooms with these types of people just through like very, very small rooms where you just find places to connect with them, going to their events, getting into their mentorships, getting into going to events where they're going to be at, where they're going to be speaking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where are these people for you? Where are all of these people for you? Where are your peers hanging out? The people who are going to be, and I think this is true with all three of these types of people within your orbit. Where are the people who are going to be the most value aligned for you, or values aligned for you? Where are and who are the people that are going to be the most strategic relationships for you to build? And where does the vibe check happen? Because if the vibe check is not there, or if any one of these pieces is missing, Like there's probably going to be some type of mismatch. Where can you find these people? Where can you find your peers? Where can you find your expanders? And where can you find your rock stars? And depending on where you're at in your business, you might not be able to get to the rock stars, the people who would be rock stars for you, unless you join their mentorship, unless you pay to be in the room in some type of event that they're running or speaking at, unless you find ways to just start to connect with them in the DM with no expectation, where you're not cold pitching them anything, but like where you're just showing up to just be visible to them. You know what I mean? So who are these people for you? And then to connect it back to the relationship orbit piece of this is, how can you start to build each part of your orbit out with each different type of these people? Because realistically, you need all of these people and all of these things. So where can you, and what's going to be the best way for you to actually do this? Where can you start to connect the outer orbit connections with new early stage connections with more rock stars? Because they're going to be a lot less accessible to you in the big picture. Usually, more likely than not, they're going to be less accessible to you. And then how can you start to fill your middle and inner orbit with your peers and expanders? And then, if you're able to building those rock stars into those places too. But that's your relationship orbit, the places in which you're building these relationships and with whom you are building them. So your relationship orbit, ideally, you're going to have those peers and expanders in your inner and middle orbit, and eventually maybe some rock stars too. But where do you actually find these people? This is where I want to introduce you to your rocket rooms. So your rocket rooms, what exactly are these and why should you care? So a rocket room is any intentional environment. So this could be physical or virtual. This could be really small. This could be in the DMs. This could be anything. But this is probably going to be your networking spaces, your events, etc. Getting in the room and networking with people is huge. But this is where proximity, access, and alignment are going to create velocity for you. I love that word velocity because there's I hear a lot of people use the word momentum, and I arguably love the word momentum too. But momentum sort of gives this, there's almost like this other side of the coin to momentum that's like, well, what if I lose momentum? Velocity, I love the word velocity because it shows you where you're developing human capital is what's going to create traction and speed for you. That's that velocity piece. So it's where your ideas, your relationships, and your visibility are going to start to compound because you're surrounded by people with the capacity, the credibility, and the curiosity. When you're building the right rooms, they're going to, if you're showing up with curiosity, the right people are also going to show up with curiosity. And that is going to expand your ultimate trajectory. Your growth trajectory is something that, like, strategically, we are always trying to think about. How does this help you on your growth trajectory? This is where your relationship capital, you're the human capital, and relationship marketing really starts to expand for you. You know what I mean? So the rocket rooms are key here. And this is where you start to build out your most intentional relationships. So the key questions to ask to find your rocket rooms. So you can see this is another acronym. I have frameworks and things for everything. So ROCKET stands for relevance, opportunity, credibility, knowledge, energy alignment, and trust. So I thought I had this separated out into, I don't, where it was just, we were going to go through one at a time, but we don't. That's fine. So relevance. So you're going to ask, is this room aligned with my current mission and next vision? What's the next big thing you're trying to build toward? Opportunity. So you're going to ask, how likely is it that being here will generate tangible ROI? Is it going to generate referrals or deals or visibility in some way, shape, or form? Is it going to offer some credibility? So does association with this room increase perceived authority? And then knowledge, will I gain unique insights or access that accelerate my skill set or perspective? Energy alignment, does the room feel activating rather than draining? And trust, do the people in this room feel in integrity with me and my value system? So when you can answer all of these questions, if you're getting like green flags, green flags, green flags all the way across the board, that's a rocket room. And it's probably rare that you're going to find rooms that give you all of these things all at once. And it's important to keep in mind that opportunity is probably going to be the hardest thing to come by. That, how likely is it that being here is going to generate tangible ROI? This is a place where you really have to look long term. Like between now and the end of this container, is this going to facilitate some type of transformation? Is it going to facilitate some type of opportunity for me? So, if you're looking at Like I have the Visionmind, which we'll talk about the Visionmind later. And I would argue the Visionmind is specifically developed to be a rocket room for people. Like that is these 6 things I want to curate this for people within the Visionmind. So opportunity, the Visionmind is a minimum 12-month commitment, and you have to commit to 12 months at a time. And there's a reason for that. You can't just come in for a month or two and then decide, like you can decide to drop out, but you're going to have to keep paying for it because you have to be willing to commit to the whole thing. And so it's a 12-month container in which you have to look at, between now and the end of these 12 months, do I think that I'm going to be able to generate tangible ROI through this? Do I think that being in this room is going to help me create more visibility for me, my brand, my offers, my products? Do I think that this is going to help me generate some type of referral to get other business to me? Is this going to lead to some type of deal or collaboration or partnership or et cetera? And the answer to these things is always going to be no if you're not willing to put in the legwork. And I think there's a whole separate training in here around how to actually use your rocket rooms to create opportunity for yourself, because this doesn't happen through osmosis. Like this doesn't happen because you just like sit back and talk to people and that's it. You have to, there's this whole separate strategy around this where there are very intentional tactics that you would put behind. Like you have to keep yourself visible to people. And we'll get into a little bit of that through the other pillars that we talk about through, the 4 pillars of relationship marketing. They will help with this, but this is not a passive action where you can't just like sit back and expect opportunity to come your way. You do have to go for it. But that's really looking at, in the long term, do I think that this is actually going to create ROI for me? I think the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory, but your rocket rooms are going to be the ones that can answer yes to the majority of these questions. Okay, so if you can get 3 out of 6, that's probably a good bet. If you can say, well, yeah, I think that it would give me 3 out of 6 of these, that might be a good bet to like dip your toe in the water on this room. If it can give you 4 out of 6, that's a really good sign that like dipping your toe into the water on this room is probably a yes. If you feel strongly that you're going to get 5 or 6 out of these, like I love that for you, and like be willing to just jump into it. Obviously understand that you can't do all of the things all at once and you can't be in all the places, but like this is how you start to evaluate, are these rooms going to be a benefit for you? And then using rocket rooms. So before, I want you to define what success in this room actually means to you. So does that mean that you're going to get 3 high caliber introductions? Does it mean that you're going to create 1 collaboration? Does it mean you're going to get 1 podcast booking? Those are really, really generic, but what do you actually want? What does success mean? So when I go back to like, you want opportunity from this, you want tangible ROI, well, define what that actually means so that you have something to measure it against, so that if you're 6 months into this free networking group that you joined, or this very low cost networking group that you joined, or whatever that looks like, did you have a definition for what success would look like? Did you actually implement something to go after that so that you're implementing on, how you can actually make that happen for yourself? And did it still not happen? Even though you were still doing all the things and being present and showing up and did it still not give you what you were looking for? Well, okay, now there might be time to reevaluate. Is that really a rocket room for you? Do you really want to stay here? And then during your time in that room, lead with genuine curiosity, right? Like that's sort of the thesis statement here is we're always leading with value and generosity. Find 3 people to support before you ever mention your work. I think that this is a really good sort of benchmark. Maybe not necessarily before you mention your work, because it's, you can always mention what it is that you do, but be of value 3 times over before expecting anything in return. I think that's just a generally great rule. Help people 3 times before you make an ask. And then after, follow up within 48 hours. So be willing to follow up. Remember to follow up. Create some type of system for follow up. Create personalized next steps also for that follow up. So being able to introduce yourself to that person, reintroduce, hey, we just met. Here's a reminder of who I am. Here's what we talked about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Being of resource to them. We're going to talk more about the resource component of things, and then a follow-up to thank them for their time, and et cetera, et cetera. So the different touch points within the relationship, find templates to create touch points for these things. And then compounding, document new connections in a relationship tracker and set reminders for nurture cycles. So I'm going to give you my relationship tracker so that you don't have to build one. If you don't already have a relationship tracker, I will link that around. If you're watching this directly on Loom, I can't imagine why you would be, but if you are, then it probably won't be linked. But I don't think that's going to be the case for anyone. So wherever you're watching this, there should be a link to download my relationship tracker, so that you can and then develop reminders for your nurture cycles. So segueing back into the relationship marketing principles, because that was a lot for connection. We are not going to spend, what we spent probably 35, almost 40 minutes just on that first pillar, not even anywhere close to this for the rest of them. I'm going to challenge myself to be done at the hour mark. We might go a little bit over an hour. So segueing back into relationship marketing pillars, rocket rooms are like the activation layer of your relationship marketing system. So your rocket rooms, if the pillars build connection equity over time with all the different types of people in your orbit, rocket rooms are where you cash in and multiply it. Okay. So I love a rocket room for people. So with that in mind, I want to go back to the rest of the pillars to start to put it all together, because this is where you really start to connect the dots, and you can start to put you can start to take a little bit more, like, what are your tangible takeaways from this? What can I start to do beyond just thinking about things? So attention is the second pillar. So this is remember, it's the acronym of CARE. Relationships are built through care. Relationship strategy is built through care. CA. So connection, and then attention. So the second pillar of attention, the purpose of this is to nurture and sustain relationships through intentional presence, consistency, and care. So attention is the act of staying attuned to your people and showing them that they matter beyond the moment that you met them. I think this is the thing where I see most people go sideways, that they've got really good intentions to show up and do all the things and be in the room and ask questions and be willing to show up to networking calls and whatever, but then they don't do anything after. Like, they don't actually follow up on the relationship. They don't actually continue to ask questions. They don't look at, like, oh, that person was interesting, I want to develop some additional type of relationship with them. Taking relationships out of a larger networking context and into a one-on-one coffee chat, if you have the capacity for that. You know what I mean? Like, showing people that you have genuine interest in them and what they do. Where you give attention and when you give attention, you create trust. And trust is what turns conversation into collaboration, clients, and community, which is ultimately what you want. Or I default to the word client. I probably should have said collaborations, customers, and community, depending on what type of product you're actually selling. It's not always clients. I work primarily with people who are working with clients, that they're doing service-based things. But anyway, that can be customers too. Your core practices of this pillar are to, one, build a relationship attention system. So having some type of system for reminders. What are your rituals that you want to practice? So practices that you want to develop, and then tools to stay in touch consistently with people. This is where having something like a relationship tracker is really helpful. And then you develop through that relationship tracker that you can, build your templates and different things around how you actually want to stay in touch with people. And then personalize the way that you're nurturing, because this is really it's a nurture system more than anything. So you're going to personalize this as much as possible. So send relevant notes. I know people who send handwritten notes, do voice messages, updates that show that you're paying attention to what it is paying attention to them and what they're doing. And then practice relational curiosity. So keep learning what matters to the people, or what learning matters most to the people that are within your orbit, especially your any rock stars that you have, but then also especially people who are in your middle and inner orbit, so that you stay relevant and top of mind to them also. So a specific best practice to develop some type of relationship cadence is, I would look at this. What are you going to do weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually? And you don't have to follow this to a T. You can develop this however you'd want. But I think by and large, this is a really good cadence to follow. So weekly, where are you going to do an outreach or generosity hour? I love this as a concept. I know I heard about this from, I think, Brendan Brouchard. And then I also think I heard this from Dean Graziosi, if you know who they are. And Dean Graziosi is Tony Robbins' business partner in a lot of different things. And Brendan Brouchard is, I think he's one of the founders, or one of the early investors of Kajabi. He's the growth day guy. Like, anyhow, I think both of them, definitely Brendan Brouchard, but I think both of them talk about how they set 1 hour aside of their time every week to just text everyone on a list. Send a message to just say, hey, thinking about you, what's going on with these things. and it becomes this sort of rote thing for them where they build it into their routine. And I love thinking about that as like an outreach hour or a generosity hour. How can you help people? And I personally, if you have the capacity for it, would highly recommend doing both. That if you've got 1 hour for outreach and 1 hour for generosity, this is something that I think would be sustainable for even someone like me, that is not like, nurturing relationships is not something that comes naturally to me. This would be sustainable to even someone like me, I think. And then monthly, doing opportunity follow-ups. So where you have some type of system to look at all the different connections that you made throughout the last month, and following up with the people where you see potential for collaborations, potential for furthered visibility, potential for clients or customers or deal flow or whatever that looks like for you. And then quarterly, looking at some type of personal macro outreach, even for people that don't necessarily have any type of immediacy to like what the ROI might be for you. So that quarterly personal macro outreach could be some type of like relationship newsletter. And I know someone recently said this to me where they were like, oh, I have a newsletter that I send out quarterly to all of my referral partners and to like my general network, where they're not like on their email list, but it's this very personalized thing that they're getting an email and they consider it like their relationship newsletter. And I was like, well, that's a good idea if you have the capacity for that. And again, you can templatize it and just make it part of your quarterly cadence that you're building into your, well, I guess your quarterly routine that you're building into like the cadence of your schedule. And then doing maybe quarterly coffee dates with people. I think this is a good idea if you're someone who is trying to limit your coffee date time after you develop that initial relationship. You can do handwritten notes. I love getting a handwritten note. It's the same thing that like I love getting flowers. I think it's something that's so like, it's so overlooked. Handwritten notes are, I think, like it's a lost art to get handwritten notes. And then personal engagement. So doing any type of personal engagement, personal outreach. And then annually, I would highly recommend you do a relationship audit. Like, where are the places where you want to spend more time? Who are the people you want to spend more time with? Where are the relationships where you're maybe not getting a lot of return? Do you want to continue pouring into those relationships? Do you think it would be worthwhile to continue pouring into them because you can see where you might get traction in the long run, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The third pillar is resources, being of resource to other people. So the purpose of this pillar is to give generously, as, I don't know why that says and, that should be as a and resource others. Maybe I did mean to write that. Give generously and be a resource to others, is essentially what that means, without any expectation of return. And this is where, if you're not careful, you can wind up burning yourself out. So this is not the main takeaway here is not to do so much that you burn yourself out. But resources are how you create relational equity. So when you share what you have, if that's offering insight, if that's making introductions to people, if that's offering your time to people, if it's offering your perspective to people, if it's showing up of value and of service with people in some way, shape, or form, and understanding that bigger connection I know where I was going with this. Understand also that bigger connections often require a lot more of this in the long run. If you want to connect with rock stars, typically when you build that relational equity, it's going to take something that's going to take longer, and you might have to do a little bit more to maintain those things. You know what I mean? Just things to keep in mind. And then this pillar separates the transactional marketers, people who are only looking for the sale as fast as possible, from true relationship builders. You give because it strengthens the whole network, not because it guarantees a personal payoff. That's what this is all about. And then the core practices here are to be the person who shows up for others, even when there's no direct benefit. Most people are not willing to do that. When you are, and you're doing it with structure and strategy and intention behind it, I guarantee you that's where that paradox of the people who are willing to play the long game and be generous in the short term, that's where you see the most traction in the long run, because this is such a key foundational principle to building that relational equity. And then practice non-attachment generosity. So you're giving freely without expectation of anything in return, and keep a pulse check on your energy, because again, you can burn out quickly, because this can become draining. So, just keep your eye on things. And this is especially true for people who are naturally overgivers. And then last but certainly not least is elevation. And elevation is where you are building a reputation and an ecosystem that naturally expands your influence. So elevation is where you start to get the compound effect of all the first three pillars. And these pillars are not necessarily built in order. It's why they're pillars, not like steps. But this is sort of the culmination of the other three. It's when your connections, your aligned relationships, the nurture that you've put behind the attention to the relationships that you've built, and the resource driven generosity starts creating priceless visibility. Like, you truly cannot buy this in most cases. The visibility that comes with it, the referrals that come with it, and the opportunities that come with it. This is where your name becomes shorthand for integrity, excellence, and generosity. And this is where people want to help people like this. When I see people who show up like this for me, they're the people who I want to help. And I know that it's not so much this place for me in my business yet. I think I will get to this point, and I've seen myself get to this point in certain areas because I've started to offer a grant program. I'm about to launch a second grant program. I've seen this when I've gone to hire in my business, where when people want something from you, there's a lot more ask of you. And the more people are asking from you, the more you have to be intentional around saying yes and no to things. And so people who are the expanders for you, and definitely the people who are rock stars for you, like, they are going to take more care and attention in the long run. And I definitely saw this when I was building my theater, being the person who was paying actors. Like, we had probably one of the highest paid theater companies with the smallest theater doing the most like controversial work. Like, we weren't doing the most run of the mill plays we weren't doing A Christmas Carol every year sort of a thing. Like, we were doing work that it was just people were not used to getting paid for it in the way that we were paying for it. And I was developing a playwriting competition where I was getting people from all over the world. Like, there were so many things with the other business that I built where I could see it was going to be exhausting if I was saying yes to every connection. And it took people, the more people were willing to pour into me first, the more I was like, I'm willing to give you the time and attention back, because I can tell that this is not about it's not just a transactional thing for you. You're not just trying to get cast. You're not just trying to get some opportunity for me. You know what I mean? So big picture, we're looking at the big picture here. And then elevation core practices are to define your relationship reputation statement. So how do you want to be described in rooms that you're not in? And what do you want other people to be saying about you in general? Like, I think this is really important. How do you want to be described, and how can you show up as that person for others? And then follow through and follow up, because reliability is the ultimate credibility. Like I said way early on, that's one of the core brand principles. We have to follow through, and we have to follow up for people, or we have to follow through for people and follow up with people. And then lastly, celebrate others publicly and create collective elevation through collaboration. So this is like, these things are all these would be their own training course, something like these are much more tactical things that you can just start to think about. But I wanted to give you some tactical things that you could maybe take away from this. I think that it would be important for you to set up some type of CRM or relationship setup. You can use mine. That's easy. That's check, check, check. We can do that very quickly. The rest of these are going to take a little bit more effort to build these out. So I would highly encourage you, as I mentioned, to develop templates for check-ins and follow-up that can feel personal. So things like Looms, if you're familiar with, I'm using Loom right now, where it's basically like a screen recorder. You can create Looms. It feels very personal. Doing personalized emails where you can tag people in different places, and then doing strategic introductions. So how can you position others powerfully, and could you create a template for that? And then how can you also help other people do the same for you? And that you can also build a template for that. Like, if you're going to ask people for referrals, give them a template to use so that they understand how to send people your way, so that they know what to say about you. And then thought leadership networks. How can you build your own thought leadership network of people who have media connections, people who might be investors, people who could be potential partners, people who could be potential visibility partners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then building relationship funnels, how to move connections from casual to client, customer, or collaborator. I use the word client a lot here, but it could be customer too. So these are things like the lower things on the list of, you go, well, okay, how do I build a thought leadership network though? How do I build a relationship funnel? What is that? we would obviously be here for a lot longer. So these were just sort of like, yeah, I'm going to drop these in the bucket of things that you can be thinking about for later on, of things that you can start to do. But that gives you sort of an overview of starting to develop your, I would call this your ROS, your relationship operating system. These are the things that you would want to start building for a relationship operating system. So we have reached the end. I wanted to do this in less than an hour. We're going to wrap up with some action items and then an invitation into your next rocket room. I will keep this really brief. So your action items, number one, you can start to define your own relationship code, your own relationship brand principles. So write 3 or 4 or 5 guiding principles for how you want to show up in relationships. Clarify your networking genius and orbit so you can identify your dominant networking style. So like builder, connector, collaborator, etc. And then map out 3 to 5 key people in each orbit layer, inner, middle, and outer. And then use this to clarify where and with whom to focus your energy and how you can show up for them within your networking genius. Then find and commit to rocket rooms. The number of rocket rooms is going to depend on your capacity. There's no right or wrong here. And then choose intentional environments. So events, masterminds, networks, etc., that feel aligned to your next growth stage, and define what success looks like for you. Because remember, if you can't measure success, you have no way of if you can't define success, you have no way to measure it. That's the better way of saying that. And then make an action plan to make that success happen, right? Like you have to actually take action to make this happen, or you can't be surprised when it doesn't happen. And then number 4, design your relationship attention system. So pick a rhythm for staying in touch. What's that cadence going to look like? Develop weekly check-ins, monthly follow-ups, quarterly reconnections, etc. Use tools or simple reminders to make that repeatable where possible. Number 5, practice generous resourcing. So each week, find one opportunity, develop that generosity hour, and definitely that outreach hour, where you can find one opportunity to give, where you can make a connection to someone, where you can make an insight, where you can give to someone in some way, a small visibility boost with no expectation, whatever the thing is, no expectation in return, in order to build that relational equity and reputation. And then number 6, and lastly, but not leastly, consider your brand elevation. So write one sentence that completes the sentence. When people talk about me in rooms I'm not in, I want them to say, and then be that person. Learn to show up as that person. So I would love to invite you to our rocket rooms. We've got the collective, the Visionmind, and then Visionaries. So Visionaries Collective it's open to absolutely anyone and everyone. It's a pitch-free networking group for generous, smart business owners. Right now we do like once a week, or like 3 or 4 times per month, we do some type of call. As it gets bigger, I can see that getting, that call cadence is going to become expanded. We're going to have more calls. But that's our networking group. If this all resonated with you, then that's probably the type of person that you're going to find inside of the collective. So I would love to have you join us in there. The Visionmind is a mastermind. So I like to call this, it's like networking on steroids. It is a true peer mastermind. Most masterminds that I've seen out in the world are not peer masterminds, even though that's what a mastermind was built for. They're more like coaching containers that just sound like fancier in some way. But a true peer mastermind is where you are getting human connection, and you are developing each other as business owners, as a peer collective of as a peer relationship system, where you are offering insight, and like you can do peer-to-peer coaching, all those things. So it's like networking, but way, 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 way deeper. There are in-person events they're optional, but there's optional in-person events that are connected to the Visionmind. That it only enrolls twice per year, and it's a 12-month commitment. So we enroll November 2025. We're doing the very first enrollment period to start in January, and then the next one will happen in May, and then June to start in July. So it enrolls twice per year with starting points of January or July. And then Visionary is our flagship in-person event that we're starting in 2026. The first one is going to be in Los Angeles at the end of September. It's a boutique conference for business owners who are ready to step boldly into your next chapter. So the way that I've been stating this is like the transformation that you can expect from Visionary is it's where you can refine and get clarity on your next big idea, but like also in a way that's much more expansive. So like whatever your next big idea is, taking it and really running with it so that it's clear and concise and compelling, but also like it's the big idea, and then giving you the tactics and the strategy to actually be able to execute on it. So that's Visionary. All of this will be linked below here. I hope to see you in one or more of these rooms. The Vision Mind comes with the collective. If you join the Vision Mind, you automatically get the collective. So I would love to see you in any or all of these places. I would love to know your thoughts. I can't wait to hear from you. And good luck developing your relationship marketing strategy. Hope this was helpful.